Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Rangers Review morning briefing for Monday, the 27th of November. I'm Derek Clark, and I'm joined this morning to look back on a largely disappointing Sunday. It's fair to say Rangers at Pittodrie yesterday won a piece against Aberdeen. Joshua Barry joins me. How are we doing, Joshua?
Yeah, good, Derek. Still battling this cold in my throat, so I hope I can manage through. But yeah, I think you're right. I think largely disappointing. It feels like a missed opportunity, but I think there's a lot of interesting things to discuss within the game. My colour piece this morning kind of touches on the tension within these two arguments. If you're an outside observer to that game and you've not watched this Rangers team for the last 2-3 years and you've seen their start under Philippe Clement, you probably think, oh, well, just a one-off, they deserve to win that. They probably, the next time that game happens, or if that game's played 100 times, they win it far more than they draw it. Contrastingly, the kind of story, to use Clement's language, that he inherits, if you subscribe, if you have watched this Rangers team for a number of years, it's hard to not look at that and say, okay, this was just another missed opportunity. And ultimately, Derek, I think only winning these types of games builds a type of confidence amongst the stands and amongst that relationship that these games can be won when the pressure is on in a title race. So, yeah, looking forward to exploring both of those arguments because I think there's some fair points on either side.
Yeah, before we do that, folks, just a quick reminder. Once again, we've got our amazing Black Friday offer on just now, where you can take advantage of a year's worth of Rangers Review content for just £12. We're practically giving it away, just a £1 a month. Absolutely sensational. All you have to do is head over to rangersreview.co.uk/subscribe to sign up. So many of you have already taken up the offer, which is absolutely tremendous stuff. So welcome aboard. Thank you very much for joining and supporting the channel, supporting the website, incidentally, of course, and to many of you who already subscribe to the YouTube account as well. Was asked over the weekend, the YouTube members, that is separate from the website, incidentally, just in case you were wondering. That is a separate thing. We are trying to sort of amalgamate the two, but that is some way down the line. The website is where the Black Friday offer is at this moment in time. rangersreview.co.uk/subscribe to sign up. And if you sign up, you'll be able to read Joshua's brilliant piece on the website this morning, just analysing that game yesterday and the sort of contrasting voices. Philippe Clement obviously talking about XG and saying Rangers should have had the 3 points today. He says if you have the expected goals we had today, we should have scored more goals. Joshua's got a couple of graphs to fire up on the screen. He has a point there, Joshua. I think watching the Rangers were much improved second half. However, as he touched on himself, that never got going, especially that first half. For me, that's a mentality issue. The second half was just a case of Rangers just perhaps unlucky in front of goal, a quality issue perhaps in the final third, not being able to put away their chances. I'm thinking of Leon Balogun. For me, he has to burst the net from that corner. Sam Lammers, he has to score, simply has to score. When he presented with that chance from Rabbi Matondo, he works it ever so well, lays it on a plate for Sam Lammers, but he has zero cutting edge in front of goal, which is why he headed straight at 𝐁𝐥𝐚𝐲. Rangers obviously coming in with the point. James Tavernier showing great composure and get another pressure penalty, of course, and it was a penalty. I find it quite staggering, Barry Robson's comments after the game and elsewhere suggesting it wasn't a penalty. It was as clear as day. So there you go. But Clement, in your piece, Joshua, he has a point, doesn't he?
Yeah, huge fan of Clement calling it expected G's instead of XG as well. So that's a nice addition. But I mean, some people I think get freaked out by it. All it is suggesting is that instead of looking at 20 shots could be from all in front of a low block from 25 yards, which have such a low probability of going in. All it's trying to do is over the course of a game or a season, try and look at what is the actual quality of these chances. What is the likelihood of that Lammers chance, of the Balogun chance, that if it is taken 100 times, what is the likelihood, based on lots of data in the background, that it finds the back of the net? What is the actual value of that opportunity? I think there's a lot to discuss, because as mentioned, there is these kind of two sides to the argument, Derek, and I've tried to summarise all of them in this piece this morning. The first one probably to touch upon, and I think you're spot on, is that the tempo that Rangers started the game at. I don't think that you have to go and win the battle necessarily when you go to somewhere like Pittodrie or Tynecastle, but I think you need to match it. And if you look at Clemont's post-match comments, if I can find them here, James Tavernier said on Sky Sports, after the first 20 minutes, we didn't respond to the first contact and the second balls. That's obviously where Rangers lose the first goal. Jack Butland had bailed them out just moments before, but they didn't kind of take heed of that. And Clement said after, in two different comments, he said, the players showed all of that, talking about resilience to come back and a good mentality. But if it was for 90 minutes, we would have won this game. And during his post-match press conference, he suggested the big working point is that our first 50 minutes were not good enough. And I've said that to the team. We're not sharp enough at the start of the game. The moment we started winning duels after 50 minutes, we started to dominate. So we need to find that level for 90 minutes. And that probably summarises the argument quite well, Derek, because I don't think you could look at that game and say Rangers didn't respond. They created a decent amount of chances against a difficult deep line defence with 5 defenders in there. So it wasn't so much that when the pressure was on, when they had the ball, they weren't able to fashion opportunities, because if Leon Balogun puts one of those headers away, we're probably having a different conversation. We'll come on to that Lammers header at the end as well. However, aside from all of that, aside from the last 50 minutes of the game, Rangers put themselves in a difficult position. And I think that's probably the level of maturing maybe that the side need to do, or kind of the repetitive what I don't know if you call it misfortune, but the repetitive failure they have in these types of games. It reminded me a lot of, you remember the Dundee United draw, 1-1 draw in Gio's kind of third or fourth month in the job, where Ahmad hit the post, and they just it took Rangers until really 50 minutes to start winning the duels, to start giving themselves a platform to play the type of football they wanted to do. But then you do that up against a lot of anxiety and a ticking clock. And what I thought was positive was that from 50 minutes onwards, and we'll show this in the graph that's coming up, from 50 minutes onwards, they were kind of able to box Aberdeen in, and it did feel must win. And it's not that you're necessarily always going to be able to do that in the first 20 minutes of a difficult away game, but I think you can limit them, Aberdeen, the hosts, more in an attacking sense, especially if you look at their goal. But if we kind of take the overall XG claim from Clement, and all this chart is doing is taking the value of a chance, which is the higher the indent, the greater the value. So you can obviously see James Tavernier's late penalty, by far and away, obviously the highest quality chance of the game. And it's putting it up gradually as the game goes on, depending on which team had a higher expected goals. And you can see, obviously, Aberdeen, on the basis of opportunities, started faster. They didn't really have anything after that. And I think that was a mixture of, obviously, they're holding on. They've got something to hold on to, but also Rangers started to win those duels and started to box them in. But if you look at that first half, Derek, although there was a few opportunities around the 30-minute mark, you have that Leon Balogun header, which should really find the back of the net. I think that's a much bigger, more kind of glaring miss than Sam Lammers, even if we'll come on to that. And I think that does signify something, as you highlighted at the top of the show. But it's not until that 50-minute mark, up until about the 80-minute mark, where Rangers have repetitive chances, and they're kind of keeping pressure on the opposition, pinning them back. And that's what Clement suggests, is they weren't really able to build that tempo before the break. So kind of, I guess, in summary, and we can come on to some of maybe the opportunities and how those opportunities actually valued up. If you look at that kind of statistical barometer at the top, Rangers should win the game 81% of the time on the basis of expected goals. Now, there's some caveats there, because they have a late penalty, which goes, really pushes their value up. As mentioned, Aberdeen are protecting a lead. So it's not as cut and dry as saying that game plays out at the same time every single time if Aberdeen don't score that early goal. But Clement certainly has a fair argument. On the basis of underlying numbers, on the actual quality of chances he created, they probably did enough to win that game. But as mentioned, the overall situation he inherits and the kind of backdrop of these games that we've seen before is where the frustration and the feeling that this was a missed opportunity comes into play, because too often we've seen that type of game. And I think only if this Rangers team can start to win those games will they build the trust that they can do that in the future, and then will they kind of earn the the one-off day that does happen in a season, or when they do have managed to get a good point on the road instead of 3 points, that's only achieved if for the rest of the time you're picking up 3 points consistently in these types of games, which they've obviously not done for the last while.
Yeah, interesting to look at those stats. Like I said, I think second half they had enough chances to win the game. Really should have won it in the end. And yeah, I think it was a weird one where both teams were effectively disappointed come the final whistle. But listen, Rangers don't lose any ground. I know there was, especially from myself, a lot of optimism after seeing Celtic dropping points to Motherwell on Saturday. But yeah, listen, Rangers need to go and do the business. Aberdeen, I seen a stat yesterday, whereas if they hadn't picked up the points they have done against Rangers, they would be bottom of the table, which tells you a lot at this moment in time. They are struggling down at the bottom end of the league. They've picked up, of course, 4 points against Rangers this season, but in the main, they're pretty much struggling down at that bottom end. But yeah, Rangers unable to get the better of Aberdeen yesterday. Lots of comments coming in, Joshua. Cantwell is, I seen him coming for a bit of criticism. Playing on the right-hand side doesn't work for me. It has to play centrally. We've said this on numerous videos. Denzel with the point here. He says, morning, Denzel. We also need to sort out the Cantwell situation. We're not getting the best out of him out wide. By the same token, neither is he doing the position justice. Can't disagree with much of what he says here. That is a conundrum, a puzzle, if you like, that I'm sure Philip Clement would call it, that he has to resolve. He has to play him centrally. It doesn't quite work out on the right-hand side. Never had his best of games yesterday, Josh. I thought Rangers looked better when Ross McCausland came on, incidentally, and Robbie Matondo, for that matter. Gave Rangers a wee bit of width. What does he do with Todd Cantwell?
Yeah, I generally agree. And obviously, as you say, Derek, we spoke about this. I've written a long piece on the website about this, which kind of concluded that if you were to give Todd Cantwell the team sheet and you were to say, where would you want to play, he probably wouldn't pick the right. There's a reason that teams haven't played him on the right before. Managers haven't played him on the right before. Cantwell said in the mix zone, Clement's seen something and he wants me to play there. I think it's just a byproduct of the overall situation, Derek. The reason I don't think he's playing on the left, and I think this comes into an overall structural thing, an overall issue Rangers have at left back. They don't have a left back. They're not playing Ridvan, and there's a physicality question about him. It doesn't seem like he's going to be first choice. Maybe he will be, but certainly up until this point, I think you'd be optimistic if you argued that he is going to be the out-and-out first choice, not least because he can't play in those European games. Barisic yesterday, I just think the ball breaks down too consistently with him, Derek. He had those 3 shooting opportunities, and 2 of them were when actually they were better crossing opportunities. I just think that's a more... Barisic has this unique quality with his final ball, which is excellent, and at times I think he's a better defender than he's given credit for. What I don't think he gives you is that variation of threat and option where he can move inside the pitch. He can combine, like James Tavernier can. He can occupy the box. He can go wide. He can move inside. When teams like yesterday pack the middle, have 5 defenders, often your fullbacks, so those fullback positions are where you're going to receive more of the ball. Either you need a fullback who can do lots of different things, I think, in that area and use the ball really well, or alternatively, you need a fullback who can maybe move inside to allow someone else to occupy that zone, who can move on to the last line. And you see that more frequently on the right. The right side in the first half was, I think, more fluid than the left-hand side. So the first reason I think maybe Cantwell's not playing on the left is, A, you've got Abdallah Sima there, and that works for Barisic because he can play the ball down the line, and he is passing it backwards less because he's got that direct option out, but also there's less fluidity and kind of rotation on that side. So I think that's the first issue. The second issue is if you play him in the middle, Tom Lawrence, where does he play? And also Sam Lammers. I know he's obviously not popular at the moment, but that's a busy area of the pitch. But it's a busy area of the pitch, isn't it? So if you're Clement and you're looking at, okay, how do I get the most out of this squad? Then I think that's probably the fine margins he's looking at. He's thinking, okay, maybe Cantwell's impact is somewhat limited there, but if he's able to get into the middle of the park, if he's able to, like for that early chance with Lawrence where he kind of curled it into the far corner and it was a good save, if you're able to get him linking up with a player like Lawrence in the middle, if you're able to get Tavernier or Cifuentes, and Cifuentes actually got a decent enough game, Derek. I've seen him getting some stick online.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I thought he used the ball. It wasn't spectacular, but for performance for a player who's not really, I think, showing that side to his game. I thought was a pretty decent first start under Clement. So I think those are the two structural questions as to why Cantwell's playing there. But I do agree with the wider question. When he's carrying the ball, he's carrying it away from a stronger side. He's not moving on to, and then when he gets inside the pitch, he's not got the angles of his left foot to play passes in behind as he would on the right-hand side. And it's getting to that point. I know Raskin is injured, but these are two players who came in last season and you immediately saw their quality. I think they suffered this season from the changes in the squad, the changes in the starting 11, the changes to their roles. I think they need consistency in their best positions to find their best form at Rangers. And I agree. I think Tom Lawrence, again, showed really good moments yesterday. Injury history would suggest he's not going to be able to start all that many games for Rangers until he maybe builds up that fitness. I would be moving Cantwell into that number 10 position because I think on his days, he's still probably Rangers' best player, and you need to put him in the optimal environment. For the reasons outlined, I don't think he's been there so far, but I would agree with Denzel's comment. I don't think you're getting enough from him in that position at the moment.
No, absolutely not. Stevie Richardson with the point here. Morning, Stevie says Cantwell in the middle and Lawrence as an 8. Is that not possible? I would mind seeing that. I've got to admit, I thought, like you say, I thought Lawrence was good yesterday. Again, unfortunate with his strike that cannons off the crossbar. When that happens and when Balogun strikes at the bar as well, you're thinking it's not going to be Rangers' day. But to their credit, Joshua, they kept on fighting. I don't think it was a case of mentality in that second half that they threw everything at Aberdeen. There was only one team looking to go on and win the game as well. I think there's still some positive to take from the game. I think that Philippe Clement, I still feel confident that he's going to get a tune out of this team till the end of the season. I foresee changes in January. I think that will happen. There's got to be some personnel alterations, but I just felt that Rangers are in more capable hands with Philippe Clement at the helm, that they can get results. Now, unfortunately, 2 points were dropped yesterday, but he did say in his pre-match press conference that he expects some games like the Hearts game at Ibrox. And I was thinking to myself, watching the game yesterday, oh, Jesus, we're going to get the very first game is going to be that against Aberdeen. But it is what it is. I think Celtic will drop other points. I don't think they're in any great shakes. I think that obviously they're not anywhere near the team that they were last season, but it's all about Rangers capitalising. Unfortunately, we're unable to do that yesterday, but I still think there's still plenty of optimism, Joshua, around this Rangers management team. And I'm going to say the squad as well. I don't think I've seen a lot of reaction on social media last night. A lot of people really upset with the fact that Rangers weren't able to claw into that gap at the top of the table. But I'm not entirely throwing the baby out with the bathwater just yet. I think we could look back on it as a point gain, perhaps. I know he did say later on in the season we might look back on the game against Aberdeen, but being pivotal, who knows? But I don't think we should be going overboard with the result.
I don't think you can, because again, if one of the Balogun headers finds the back of the net, it's a very different story. And this is a difficulty, I guess, in trying to analyse a football game, because you've got the whole emotional side, which is totally understandable and why everyone is invested in it. And you've got the frustration of the squad, which is something that Clement inherits. No manager is going to come in and win every single game of football, especially when they've inherited an extremely difficult situation, which he has, when it's one of the more difficult games of the season. So, and again, it's not as if Rangers went up there and created no opportunities, and when they went behind, never looked like they were going to win the game. Again, if you're an outside observer, Derek, watching that game, and you just sit down and you don't know much about either team, you think Rangers are really unfortunate to come away from not winning that game. I think that's not to say it's a perfect performance. That's not to say there's not issues. That's not to say there's not this whole question about mentality and this whole question about, okay, can they capitalise when the pressure's on? Because ultimately, if you're going to win a title as a football team, you cannot rely on your direct opponents to drop points. That can be a nice advantage, but you can only rely on yourselves. And James Tavernier said yesterday on Sky, there's a lot of points to play for, and that's true. But too often in recent seasons, Rangers have fallen into that trap, and then there is an end to the season, and by which point those points to play for dry up, and there's not enough games left to catch to catch the team at the top of the table, which has always been Celtic in the last couple of seasons. So listen, I think if you look at, I've got the shot map here as well, Derek, and Rangers, I'll take that banner off for a second, but Rangers, their best two opportunities in open play were the two Balogun headers. The first one in particular, you'd expect them to score and do better with. As I say, it's not as if they created 3 expected goals, but away from home, and you've got to contextualise that. When they were trying to limit the Aberdeen counter-attacking threat, they still created just under 1 expected goals more than them over the course of the game. Hit the crossbar twice. The Sam Lammers miss had an expected goals, I think it was 0.11, right? The Danilo header against Hearts was 0.1. It was either 0.15 or 0.16. Those are the differences. I think if that chance falls to the right player, Rangers could have won that game. If the chance falls to the right player in different at different times in those games, if Balogun's able to put the ball either side of the goalkeeper, then the mood is very, very different. I don't think anyone expects Rangers to go to these type of away games. I don't think anyone expects them to always be a beauty contest, as we often discuss. I think the main criticism would be they didn't start the game at the intensity they should have, and they made it difficult for themselves. And if you don't start the game in that way, and you do start to win the duels, and you do get through the first 20-30 minutes where Aberdeen are pressing more intensely, and then they're not going to be able to match those energy levels after, and they get pinned back, then maybe it's a different game. But I think you're spot on. It's not I don't think Clement, you can look at him and say he did anything particularly wrong yesterday. I don't think there's any reason to not look at his overall start and think it's been very good. He inherits this difficult overall context, which again, only winning these games will prove. But I think that late header kind of sums it up. It was only a tiny bit of a better quality, chance quality that fell to Danilo on that day against Hearts, where I think Rangers were worse. They were at home and their expected goals were higher, but I thought the tone of that game was pretty different to yesterday. I thought the kind of repetition of crosses in that game compared to yesterday was different as well. If one of those Balogun headers falls the right side of the goalkeeper, doesn't hit the crossbar, maybe Tom Lawrence, that goal from range goes in. As Clement said, you maybe need a little bit of luck in these games to win them. That didn't happen. So you can completely understand his argument. But again, the overall context that's important. It doesn't say chuck the baby out with the bathwater, or I think is necessarily critical of Clement. It's the overall game that people have seen before. And rather than the intensity that Rangers ended it with, I think it was a lack of intensity they started with that made it a bit of an uphill battle for them. Yeah, it has to be a lesson learned for Philippe Clement. It's just whether they can get that reaction from the players, and they can't afford to start games in the second half. JDS with the point, it has to be a bump on the road because the game's coming thick and fast for Rangers. We've got the European game on Thursday night and then back to league business on Sunday when St Mirren come to Ibrox, who are going pretty well under Stephen Robinson, but Rangers need to get back on the winning trail pronto. Right, let's get to some of the comments coming in, quite interesting just off the back of the game. This is an interesting one, Joshua. Now, Rangers, you mentioned this in your piece, Cyril Dessers never came on yesterday. Yeah. Sam Lammers, of course, we touched on, missed that chance. Huge outlay spent on those two in the summer. Rob says, I take 𝐁𝐥𝐚𝐜 in a heartbeat, but they would never sell to us. I think it cost Aberdeen around about just over £500,000, something in the region of that. You would take him in a heartbeat. I know we've discussed Lon Shankland as well, but Rangers not getting anywhere near value for money for those two players. And 𝐁𝐥𝐚𝐜, would that be achievable, do you think, for Rangers? Is that someone they should be looking at? I'm not entirely sure what Aberdeen would be looking for in terms of a transfer fee. I'd imagine it would be quite substantial, but I'd take him any day of the week over Lammers and, especially Cyril Dessers, who never came on yesterday. Yeah, well, I think Chris said yesterday, we don't know when Clement's observation period will end, but he will, I'm sure he will be, if he doesn't think players can make an impact for him. Again, the piece, I did a piece over the weekend, excuse this tangent, but a piece over the weekend with his long-term assistant, which was really fascinating, worked with him at all his different clubs. And the thing that came out in that interview with the detail of someone who's worked closer with him than anyone else in the last number of kind of 6 years since he started his managerial career at Beveren in Belgium and then over to Monaco, is the intentionality of his man management, the way he tries to and brainwash players was a quote he uses, how he uses psychologists to understand players better. Basically, the detail that not only extends to the tactics, but also the detail off the pitch and the way that he manages individuals. So I think he'll be doing everything he can to work out, okay, can I get more out of these players who can contribute over the course of the season? But also, and this is where the difficulty comes in with the conversation of a sporting director and a long-term picture, he will know surely by now who he can rely upon and who he cannot. You're right, for the £8 million spent. If you're not even bringing Dessers off the bench in a game like that when you need a goal, then I think that does speak volumes at the moment. Yeah, 𝐁𝐥𝐚𝐜 is a really good player. He scores all the time against Rangers. I think buying him from Aberdeen would be difficult because obviously the two clubs aren't the best of friends. But yeah, he's a good, really good player, and his finish was excellent, Derek. So I don't think many people, if there was the right price for a player like that, would disagree. I don't think there'd probably be the right price in this circumstance, though.
Yeah, it pains me why Rangers never looked closer to home in the summer as opposed to the manager jetting off to far-flung places to entice these guys to the club. But there you go. Maka with the point here says, morning, guys. The difference yesterday was not having a Shankland or 𝐁𝐥𝐚𝐜 up front. PC needs to look at that position in January. I'm sure he will be Maka, because that may cost Rangers the league if they lack a cutting edge up top. They really need someone to bang the goals in. I'm sure that is a priority.
I think Danilo will do that, though. I actually thought he had an okay game yesterday. He was a little bit crowded out at points. I thought he linked play pretty well in the second half.
If he gets injured, Joshua, Rangers. Yeah, if he gets injured, Joshua, Rangers are in deep trouble.
Yeah, agreed. I think they have a clear number one there. I wonder if Sima will be picked as maybe at points a number 9 as well. I thought Matondo, we had a piece on the website last week, Derek, which kind of argued this. At the simplest point, it was suggesting, look, Matondo, if he's going to play wide on the left, here's the things he needs to do to become less predictable. And it looked at the Morton game as an example, and effectively how, in the same way we're describing with Cantwell on the right, if he is moving on to his left foot, I don't think that's as much of a threat. Whereas if you're on your more comfortable side, you can go two ways. You can attack players two ways. That's what Matondo could do on the left hand side, and he does brilliantly for the that Lammers miss, because the Lammers header, because it's not, he receives it in a difficult position, and I think that is an encouraging sign as well, because I do think he can become a big player under Philippe Clement. Is that you getting a Black Friday delivery there?
Yeah, it was a Royal Mail. It was a postie just arrived there. I've just told them just to leave the parcel at the door. So who knows what that's going to be? I'll let you know tomorrow, folks. But carry on, Joshua.
But I can't remember what I was saying. Anyway, I think Matondo looks. I think he can become a starter under Clement, and I think it's that type of movement where we've seen that he can cut inside in his right foot and score goals in space. That's great. That's not going to happen that much domestically. When you get the ball consistently on the left wing, if you're trying to break down a defence, that's the type of motion you need to make. And again, that piece kind of argued, okay, yes, you can say pace isn't effective against a low block, but every single team in the world has pace against a low block. Every single team in the world has dribblers against a low block. Almost every single team in the world at the moment is playing with wingers for that direct reason. So it was encouraging to see him come into a game like that where it is really deep, a really deep defence, and make that type of impact, having come back from injury, even if it was only flashes, because that maybe gives you a little bit more depth up front, Derek, if you can think, okay, can Sima play in the centre as well? We know he can finish. He's been playing a different role under Clement, because I agree with you. If Rangers were to lose Danilo at the moment, then I do think they'd be in big trouble.
Yeah, what did you make? I mean, we touched on it briefly when we did our press conference reaction video on Friday, but Clement, when you quizzed him about Matondo coming back, and he said he was playing centrally in Belgium as a sort of second striker. Could he perhaps be moved in field, you think, Joshua?
I think that's the Belgian league has a lot of space, and again, we've done a piece on the website with Matondo's, the now manager of Cercle Bruges, who worked with Matondo. All stuff you can if you sign up to Black Friday deals, the type of thing you can read on the website. But he gave some really interesting insight into Matondo's best position, the type of football that was played in Belgium, and why that got the best out of him. Again, the confidence that he was instilled with in that team, and why he was able to find consistency there. If you've got an open game, Derek, I don't see why not. If you've got a closed game, I don't think he's at his best receiving with his back to goal. But you need, I guess it depends. If a team's maybe going to defend in a 5-4-1 and really try and crowd out Rangers in the wide areas, which they don't normally do because I think Rangers are more dangerous in the middle than out wide, then yeah, I think you maybe want them in the middle to drive at opponents and just commit players in a way that Kent used to do on his good days for Rangers. But if you have a game like yesterday where teams are trying to crowd the middle, there's got to be space somewhere. There's always, if they overload one side, there's space on the other side. If they crowd the middle, there's a bit more space out wide. So I think that the challenge for Matondo, we've seen him this season show what he can do in flashes. That PSV game, St Johnstone, Cameo, Ross County, Livingston as well. We've seen that. I think he's more confident, and when he's attacking into space, no one's going to be able to keep up with him. I think the challenge for him is how does he translate that into becoming a starter? And I think the type of game yesterday where he was able to make a good impact when you're up against a deep defence is encouraging, because in the past, I think you'd have seen him try to cut inside all the time and shoot into areas where there's not much value in that. You're much better trying to get to the byline and cut it back, and no coincidence that he's able to create a good opportunity from one of those moments.
Yeah. Right before we watched a couple of comments that have popped in. Mark says, good morning, guys. Love listening to the morning briefing, usually on my nightly drive from Inverness to Glasgow. Super stuff, Mark. Thank you very much for tuning in. And Dana Life says, another great win for the Rangers women's team yesterday. Absolutely beating Montrose by 7-0. So congratulations to Joe Potter and the women's team. Just a reminder, folks, if you want to take advantage of all the content on the Rangers Review website, now is the time to do so. Just £12 for an entire year. It's an amazing Black Friday offer. It's only on until Friday, so time is running out. So many of you already signed up. We've been blown away actually how many of you are taking out a subscription, so thank you. And a quick word as well for our brilliant podcast sponsors, the MPH Group. They have a wonderful winter boiler deal on offer at this moment in time. The all-important links are in the description below, so if you're thinking about changing your boiler, folks, give these guys a call. Right, huge thanks to Joshua and to everyone for interacting with the show as ever. It's greatly appreciated. We'll be back again tomorrow morning as we begin the build-up to Thursday night when Aris Limassol come to town. Hopefully Rangers will get the better of these Cypriots and book their place in the knockout phase of the Europa League. Until then, enjoy the